So, hi everyone. Thank you all for joining us for our alumni experience event. We have invited four of our lovely alumni, Monisha, Sumit, Terry, and Hanchuan, back to talk about their their device wait first personal post grad experiences. That was a tongue twister. I'm sorry about that. So I'll pass off our mic to our speakers, and if you guys could introduce yourself, your name, your preferred pronoun, what your major was in college, fun fact about and we'll go in alphabetical order by last name. So starting with Monisha.
Okay, I heard like half of what you said, so let me know if I missed something. So, hi everyone, my name is Monisha. I graduated this year. I majored in chemical engineering and minored in science, technology, and society. And I've been involved with SASE since I was a sophomore, so I guess 3 years. And I was in the e-board last year as external relations officer. And right now, I live in Delaware. I've got a job at WL Gore, which is a like a polymers company, and I'm a process engineer. So I started a couple weeks, well, a little more, a couple months ago. So yeah, like online onboarding, online graduation, it's all kind of the same these days. So I don't know, did I miss anything, Michelle? Or
Fact about yourself.
a fun fact about myself? Oh, I used to be a nationally ranked competitive archer. There we go.
So cool. Oh my gosh.
You're up next.
Me, right? Okay.
Yep.
Hi, everybody. My name is Samat Faruqi. Preferred pronouns are he, him. I think those are the important ones. Yeah. I graduated from RPI in 2019 with a dual degree in computer science and ITWS with a concentration in information security. And as of graduating, I am now working in Seattle, Washington at the Boeing Company, working as an aviation products cybersecurity engineer. Fun fact about myself, I have been in 3 car accidents in the last 2 years, and none of them were my fault.
That's not fun.
None of them were my fault, though. It's a fact. That's the fun part. I didn't have to pay for anything.
Does it involve ones where you hit the deer?
Yes, actually, that's one of them. Again, not my fault. I'm very good at driving, thank you. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Anything else you hear about me is slander.
Okay, Terry, you're up next.
Hi everyone, I'm Terry. I got my BS in biomedical engineering in 2018, and then I got my MS in biochemistry from Albany Medical College in actually this past year during the pandemic. And I just recently started my MD at New York Medical College. And I kind of joined SACE my freshman year, but I decided that I didn't want to be that active, which I kind of regret, and I'll talk about that later. But I got really active my junior and senior years when I became vice president. Other than that, fun fact, I'm here with former president Aaron Shea here in the background.
Hi, Aaron.
That's a big yikes. Ooh, special guest.
Hello everyone. My name is Han Yang. I graduated a few months ago with a degree in material science and economics. My preferred pronoun is him, his, he, or he, him, his. I am currently a grad student in University of Pennsylvania, majoring in nanotechnology. A fun fact about me is I used to be more used to using my left hand when writing, but then my dad says it is very not normal. You should use your right hand, so now I use my right hand.
Wait, so are you ambidextrous? Can you do it with both hands?
I can, because I'm too used to my right hand now. It has been more than 15 years. I don't know how to use my left hand.
All right. Now I believe that's the intro for all of our 4 alumni. So I guess we'll get into it. The first question for today is what is sorry about that. What is a typical workday at a job or school or whatever, like for you? What are some current projects that you're working on? So we could go in alphabetical order again. So, Manisha?
So I'm a process engineer, and just a little bit about the company I work for. So my company makes WL Gore. They make a bunch of products using fluoropolymers. So I have two projects. One is a filtration project. So I'm working with these filters that capture mercury. They do like catalytic reactions to capture mercury out of like flue gas, so like coal power plants, anything like that. These filters are used for that. And then in another project I'm working on cables for it's electronic cables and components. So it's like cables for defense and aero mainly. So like not really commercial. And I would say, okay, so like for my filtration project, it's all new product development. So I'm actually we're it's like very similar to R&D. We're developing like a new type of filter, and so right now I'm working on validating some test methods to like determine bond strength with the filter. So that's very interesting because the company I work in, their structure is very different from like it's not like it's considered like a lattice structure where you don't actually have like a boss or anyone you work under. You just work in small teams. So it's really open ended. They basically just said, we need to figure this out. Can you figure this out? And I go to work and I try to figure out like a new type of test method that can be used for this filter that they're trying to put in production next year. Then for my other project, I'm working on validating a piece of equipment. So I don't know if anyone's familiar with design of experiments. Basically, there's a new machine that we're using to stripe. I don't know how detailed I should go, so I'll try to keep it quick. But basically, we're trying to stripe pigment onto a basically a type of tape that's used to wrap around Ethernet cables. It provides like really good insulation, so that's why it's really like important. And this machine is like crazy. Like it's from this like crazy machine from Germany. The entire manual is in German. I don't know any German, so like it's it's been kind of hard this other project. But basically, what I'm doing is I'm doing a bunch of experiments to try to figure out the right process inputs to get the right process output. So, for example, one of the issues we've had in the past is like the ink is not adhering to the tape properly. And so we're using this machine that is ironically called the Corona Treatment Unit, named before Corona, but it goes through the Corona Treatment Unit and the surface energy increases, allowing for the ink to adhere. So basically, a typical workday would be, me setting up some experiments, writing out maybe a protocol for something I'm trying to test, and then talking to some operators, maybe some, I don't know, different engineers to try to figure out something related to these two projects. So yeah, I hope that maybe explains a little bit more about the kind of work that I do.
Yeah, that's really great. It gives a little insight into what kinds of things are happening or can happen after graduation. So, for the next person, Summit.
Yeah, sure. So a typical workday for me really changes depending on what time of year it is, because so far from my time at Boeing, I've worked on different systems in different areas. And as you can probably imagine, if you haven't seen the news recently, Boeing's kind of going through a lot of changes right now, and with that comes a bunch of changing priorities. So I could be working on one project one day, and then I could be working on a completely different one the next day. When I first joined Boeing, I was working in autonomous systems. So working on, and expanding upon my job role a little bit, I'm an aviation product cybersecurity engineer, which is really just a fancy way of saying I try to integrate new cybersecurity solutions into different airplane systems. So when I was first starting out at Boeing, the first project I was on was in the autonomous plane environment, and I would just work to integrate new solutions into that environment. And this required me examining different systems and looking at different tools, changing them, doing what I could in order to make them fit into our experimental platforms. And sometimes this got really cool. Just last year, I went to our testing site 4 times, which is like a 3-hour drive away from us. I got to stay on the company card, got to eat like meals, not having to pay for it. Just really nice experience. But then, as things change in different companies, and that's something that you have to keep that in mind for whatever company you go to afterwards. Things can change really quickly, and you just have to be ready to adapt for it. So our certification team, the way that my team is kind of structured, we have a couple different teams. One of them is focused on doing certification because, as you can imagine, airplanes are very heavily regulated and they need to adhere to FAA standards. And there needs to be a group of folks that decide if an airplane is actually suited up to standard for in terms of cybersecurity. So that team needed some help, and I essentially was with that team for a good 3 months, 4 months, I want to say, just working on that certification aspect. So that was examining information from different airplane systems. I got to take a look at all the innards of an airplane essentially and say, okay, I think this can withstand a cyber attack, or I don't think this can withstand a cyber attack. Let's do that. So that's another project I was on. Then these days I'm working as somebody working on something called a tabletop exercise, so a cyber tabletop exercise. These are essentially they're meant to be quick exercises that help you evaluate the cybersecurity of your system. So somebody can come to us and say, hey, we'd like to do an exercise, or we can go to a group and say, hey, you guys are launching something brand new in the airplane soon. Let's do a tabletop and make sure that you're okay. So it's an inexpensive way to evaluate your cybersecurity of whatever component or system that you're trying to integrate. And so I help lead that group that puts those things on. So that's just one aspect. And then another aspect that I've been getting into recently is a bunch of testing. So one of the other groups of our team, and something that I just wanted to learn from, they handle a bunch of airplane testing. So what that means is getting to go into the lab, getting to actually physically see the computers that go onto an airplane, and then just try to break them. Because it's so much fun just getting your hands on the machines themselves and then just being allowed to do whatever you want in order to try and see if it has any risks for cybersecurity. So that's a whole lot of fun. So it really depends on time of year. I could be asked to go push onto a different project, right? And just the biggest thing is that you're able to adapt to working on all these different things.
All right, thank you. It sounds pretty interesting after all that happened with Boeing in the past 2 years.
Oh yeah, tell me about it.
All right, Terry?
Right. So even though our last two presenters are currently working, my work schedule is a little different because I've voluntarily chosen to go to school for another 4 years. And so I can kind of split up my workday into two aspects, which is classwork and research. And the former, classwork, usually consists of, because of current pandemic, most of my classes have still been these live Zoom lectures, but also these office hours that we can attend. In addition to one or two classes they still try to keep in person, specifically, things like trying to take a patient's history, and also anatomy lab where we're actually looking at these cadavers and actually learning about the different parts of the human body. Other than that, with regards to research, there's a lot of free time to figure out how you want to study. There's no homework now, which I really enjoy. Although the price tag is still a little bit more than undergraduate for sure. But research is pretty abundant even during the pandemic. There are lots of projects involved with looking at the different types of aspects of the actual virus itself. We're talking the way that it affects different communities, the way that the actual virus itself looks. And so I'm kind of actively trying to look into this lab where they're looking at the way that the coronavirus is actually affecting the pulmonary, the lung breathing system, and the long-term effects that can have on our human body. But other than that, it's still more school, and it's a lot of probably what you guys are still going through.
All right. It sounds like homework. is kind of interesting in graduate school, isn't it? I mean, we'll find out soon from Hanchuan.
Hello everyone. A typical workday for me is doing homework. Unlike Terry, who doesn't have any, I have a ton. But I am in a program that does a lot of projects as well. But you have to know what is going on before you do other projects. That's why I'm having a lot of homework currently. My program is the two main directions in my program is lithography and self-assembly, which is both nanofabrication. So what basically it does is take a small little piece of material and you put patterns on it and make this pattern with some properties that is of your desire. It can be electrically conductive or it can be magnetically conductive, or it can be very mechanically elastic. With those materials, you can build the small structures that leads to bigger assemblies, like the chips of your phone, or the screen on your phone, or the display of your laptop, LCD display. But now, currently, my workday is I wake up, I take classes, I do homework, and learn how to do experiments before I actually go to experiments and come back, do homework, and go to sleep.
You have a lot more on your schedule than Mr. Terry over here. So thank you guys for answering the first question. Just a quick note for those in the audience. We will be taking questions as a Q&A at the end of the event. If you guys have any questions you want to ask either specific alumni or to all of them in general. So our next question for you guys today is, what are some roadblocks you have experienced since you have graduated and how did you overcome them? So now we can go backwards, starting from Panchuan.
uh, so the first thing I have noticed after I graduate is that I fail to know as many people as I was while I was in RPI, because I feel like the RPI, the entire community in RPI, regardless if I'm in SASE or if I'm in my materials engineering department or if I'm in my apartment, is all a group of people that I know very well, and they knows me very well as well. So every time I run into trouble, I can always turn to them for some solutions and some comforts. But now I moved to a different place with the entire different group of people, and the entire different group of people who teaches me classes or to go to classes with me. I find it somewhat more secluded from this environment, and sometimes I don't feel very fitting in. But I am working on it by trying to know more people and talk to more people more frequently. The second roadblock I've hit is the things that I'm working on in my grad school is enormously harder than what I was when I was an undergrad. So when I was in undergrad, I was somewhat objectively half-hearted when I learning my classes. I wasn't paying 100% of effort, but I still can get a okay grade when I go to test. But now everything is so hard. I have to work nightly, and I get an average grade. That's another roadblock I'm hitting on, and I am working on it by working nightly and trying to get help from new people.
Well, as a transfer student myself, I know how it is to move into a new place without knowing anyone. It's kind of hard. All right. Terry.
Yeah, if I can just keep extending on what Han was saying, yeah, adapting to a new curriculum is really tough, especially when it feels like, unlike undergrad where you choose your classes, it feels like now you have a core set of classes where you're expected to just know everything, and when you're with peers that are so honestly driven, it definitely gets difficult at times. I feel like it can be like kind of a toxic environment where you're self-conscious about how much you know and how much you need to learn. And I've had to, like, I've taken 3 sets of tests so far, and I've had to adjust the way I've studied for every single one. It's been drawing out diagrams, it's been flashcards, and also it's harder for me to actually like convey my experience to my parents. I mean, I even had this experience during undergraduate, but I noticed that every year I get older, it becomes slightly harder to connect with my parents about what I'm actually doing in school and the things I want to do. I think for my parents, especially since I was born here and was a first generation immigrant, uh, I think the biggest thing is just my parents always just wanted to have some oversight over my life, and I guess each step of the way I've just had to make friends that are going through the same thing that I have. So I completely understand you, Antoine. But in that sense, I think the best thing that all of you can do right now is make the friends and keep the friends that you have, because honestly, they will be your friends for a very long time.
It gets lonely out here without friends. All right, Summit.
Yeah, sure. So just also kind of echoing what Antoine and Terry have said, definitely for sure. Whatever stage of life that you're in, you're going to need some people to help you along the way. I always subscribe to that mentality that, there's no self-made person, in my opinion. There's only you, no matter what stage of life you're in, right? Even if it's the person who just gave you your coffee at the coffee shop, right? Somebody has helped you get to where you are now. So just be sure to appreciate those folks. In terms of any specific road trips, oh my God, roadblocks, we're in the mood for road trips, I guess. Any specific roadblocks that I've experienced? Yeah, it was my first time, especially for me, after graduating. I moved across the country, and now I'm currently living in the West Coast after living in the East Coast my entire life. And that was definitely a huge change. Just in the first month, and I'm not going to get into too much detail, but just in the first month of me living here, I had been into a car accident, which was not my fault. I had my debit card hacked. I had to go to the hospital for something else. My teeth were in terrible shape in one instance as well. Had to go to the dentist very early in one morning um, in order to help deal with that. So sometimes life just kind of hits you like a truck, right? And the other biggest thing here was that I didn't have my parents that I could just rely on in order to be like, yo, like, can one of y'all take me to the hospital right now? Or just, I wasn't in the car with my dad, right? Somebody had hit me, like, and it was just me. So you need to steel yourself. You need to go through those kind of experiences. And when you're in those experiences, you just need to remember, at least for me, at the end of the day, it's going to get better, right? I'm somebody that really subscribes to the opinion where as long as you keep a good attitude, which don't get me wrong, it's very easy to say, but it's very hard to do in practice. I'm not, just some crazy idealist that just thinks, oh yeah, just think happy, everything's going to be happy. No, not everything's going to be happy all of the time, but a lot of what you can control is affected by how you're doing and how you're thinking about it. So definitely that cross country move was one that I needed to think, okay, I'm on my own now in that respect, right? There are things that are going to happen to me that I can't just rely on, a bunch of other people for. But at the same time, I have to think in a good way. And it's not as if those people are gone, right? I can still call my parents. I can still ask for them for advice. I can ask my friends for advice. So, getting back to what Antoine and Terry were saying, those folks that you met, right? Reach out to them too, in case you ever feel as if you are getting a little overwhelmed with anything that's going on. So that also just having that support network, right? And especially for those freshmen in the chat or any people that are just starting their RPI career. And I'm sure it's especially harder going through the coronavirus pandemic, but getting to know some folks and starting to build those relationships is one that's really going to help you in the long run, for sure. Also, put everything into a calendar, like, because that even if you're working, you're gonna find that you'll have some time, at least to yourself. So just make sure you're siphoning off that time really well. Putting things into a calendar really helped for me.
Management is what matters, especially when everything is so stressful nowadays. Anisha?
So I guess kind of jumping off what someone said, like adjusting to like after graduating, like I stayed home for a while because of Corona and everything, and then I moved to Delaware. And it was definitely similar like experience in that it was really hard in the beginning to adjust. I was all like happy for the first couple of weeks, but then like started work the same week, like the week before I started work, my grandpa actually passed away, so I was feeling very homesick, and it was like really hard to put my best foot forward at work while going through like those personal things. And, like when someone said life just hits you like a truck, I definitely understand that. I feel like I've been going through that. I'm kind of coming out the other side. Like, I don't know, I got locked out of my apartment the other day. Like my roommate's car broke down and I had to drive her everywhere. Like I'm coming home from work at like 8 o'clock every day. So like, things, I just got a trash can like last week. I lived like a month and a half without a trash can in my apartment. So, it's hard, like, especially like, you leave college, you leave your high school, you go to college, there's usually like a little adjustment, but everybody's experiencing it with you. But when you move from college to wherever you're going next, it's not the same. Like you don't have the same group of people with you. So it's definitely very different, adjusting somewhere new. I'm really lucky and fortunate that I have a roommate that I knew who went to RPI. But even with her, like we're both going through different things, and also like you have work and there's people relying on you at work, so you can't just like take a day off like you might be able to in college, where it's like, oh well, the only person I'm affecting is myself. It's not that simple. Like I'm not just affecting myself if I take like a break and don't do my work. I'm also affecting like everyone on my team. So that's definitely like a different mindset. It's hard to get used to that. It's not this it's not it's not the same. Like I would say it's just as hard as school, but like it's hard in a different way. So definitely what someone is saying on like reaching out to like people and trying to keep like strong relationships with your friends. Like you'll be surprised who you reach out to, but like and if you don't know anybody either, like there's always opportunity to make new friends. So like me and my roommate, we connected with two people that we didn't know very well in college, but we're also from RPI and they live in the area, and we're like now they're kind of like our backup in the area. If something happens, we know who to call. So like there's always someone there, and there's always an opportunity. You just have to find it and like make sure you build your village back up after leaving college. But yeah, so I definitely think I'm on the other. I'm like still kind of the truck has hit me. I'm moving forward now, but still got some adjustment to do. I'm just glad I have a trash can. But but in terms of work, very different. So like work and home life balance is really hard. I found in the beginning, like in college, there's like this mentality like you work whenever you have work, right? You have homework, you would do it on the weekends, like morning, evening, whatever. You finish your work before the deadline if you're a good student, at least. But with work, you're waking up in the morning, you're going through a whole day of work, and sometimes like there's always something else you can do, right? And so remembering that, like, to keep time for myself and make sure I'm not like coming home at 8 o'clock all the time, like not working like 60-hour weeks, that has been like definitely an adjustment to understand that, like, even though the people around me wish I was working that much because it makes the team more productive, that it's not a necessity. Because I definitely think like starting a new job, you feel like you have something to prove. Like you want to prove that you belong there, and you're with all these smart people. And while you're trying to prove yourself, you just have to make sure you don't lose yourself. You have to make time for yourself. So another thing I found really hard is like settling into a routine, like in the morning. Also with work from home, a routine is really hard. Like, sometimes I don't have meetings till like maybe 10 o'clock, and I'll just sit in bed and it'll be like 8:30 and I'll be like, oh yeah, I was supposed to start work 30 minutes ago. So, there's definitely like, it's definitely an adjustment, but In terms of work itself, one thing that I found that was really important was learning to ask for help. You're not going to know everything. You think you got out of RPI. You think you RPI is hard. We're all struggled through it one way or the other. So you think you're ready for everything, but you're really not. Like, it's what and I'm not trying to make work is hard, but what I mean is every company you learn the basics at RPI, right? You have all the tools, but the work you do in the workplace is very specific to that company. So a chemical engineer at a totally different company who's also named process engineer may be working on something extremely different from what I'm doing. So you have to remember that you're not expected to know everything. And so a thing I've had that was really hard to figure out in the beginning was learning to ask help to people, especially when I'm virtual. You can't just pop by to someone's cubicle. You have to set up a meeting and be like, hey, I don't know you, but can I meet and ask you questions? So that was one thing. Another thing is making sure to speak up for myself. I found that in meetings, especially in the beginning, I've been a little more timid, reserved. I know some people from SASE who know me might be like, what the heck? Because I'm always yelling. But I'm being honest, it's not the same because you're around a bunch of people, you don't know them very well, you don't know what you're supposed to know and what you're not supposed to know. So sometimes I'm is my opinion valid? Do I actually know what I'm talking about? It's kind of imposter syndrome. I have to remind myself, no, I'm a strong, independent woman who knows what I'm talking about. So you just have to be every morning I gotta wake up and be today's gonna be a great day. I can and I will. Just I'm gonna kill this day, even if you don't know anything that's going on. Because right now at work, half the time I don't even know what I don't know. So it's definitely an adjustment. But and the final thing is that remembering not to measure my worth based off of how I'm doing at work. And I know that may be something some of you do at school where how you do on your exams, you're oh, I didn't do well on this exam, and then you feel really bad about it because you think that your worth is determined by the way your exam is or your performance in school. And remembering that these are not normal times, so you can't do that because these are not normal times. You have to give yourself some slack when things are happening in your life. Life happens and people understand that. So that's another thing that I have to definitely remember sometimes with my projects, when I'm behind or I'm feeling I'm lost or something, that it's okay to not know everything. It's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to remember that not everything's gonna go perfect, but in the end, you come out the other side all right. At least I hope so. I just started. Some of them know better than me. So that's what I have to say since then.
You do normally come out. You do normally come out better, Monisha, and I'm sure you are going to as well.
Yes. Cool. I hope you're right.
I know you will.
Thank you, Monisha. I think it's a really good point that you brought up, where not everyone can work their hardest all the time, even if you try. Sometimes everyone will have their ups and downs, and it's not really something you can avoid. So thank you guys again for answering this question. Kadar is going to take over for the rest of the questions. So, Kadar.
Yeah, so we're going to be moving on to our next question, which is what advice would you give to someone who's currently an RPI student who's currently trying to get their first internship, co-op, or job, or really just trying to advance their career in their or in your respective field or industry? So Monisha, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So I guess just to give a little bit of background. I did chemical engineering, but I've interned at a couple places. I interned at a consulting company where I did wastewater engineering. I interned at the New York State Attorney General's office for their social justice division, where I was working on scientific analysis for policy drafting. And then I also worked at SABEC, a chemical plant, where I did process engineering and sustainability and energy engineering. So a variety of things. The Attorney General's office, that was not in my field. That was in my STS field. But in regards to the other ones, the way that I was able to land these internships and then eventually get different job offers and accept the one that I got now was by doing a lot of research. So I think a lot of people underestimate the power of research, but you really, to get a job in your field and to get a job you want, you need to just do a lot of research on the company, try to and that means a lot of networking too. So for example, when I for SABIC, I did a lot of research on what the types of chemicals the company made, and then I found people on LinkedIn who I knew who had interned there or worked there, RPI alum, and I reached out and I was like, hey, can you tell me a little bit more about your company, your role? I'm very curious about the type of work you do. So that way, when the interview came, I really knew what kind of people they hired, and I was able to pivot to make my character and my experiences match their values. That's another thing. So making a company feel special is important. So during an interview process, at least, so that they don't just think that you're just applying out of the blue, oh, let me apply to 100 jobs, you're one of them. But in terms of getting a job, I think the most important thing to do is just practice a lot. So I did a lot of research into company values and types of people companies hire, the types of roles they're looking for, the types of projects they have. But then also I looked at the kinds of excuse me. So in addition to that, I also practiced a lot. So what I mean is interview practice all the time with my friends, trying to figure out the best way to talk about why I want to work for them, making sure I had a strong cover letter that was reviewed by a lot of people, things like that. It really means it makes a difference. You have to remember that you're not going to be perfect the first time around, and once you get past your roadblocks, you can become really good at networking with people. And that's another thing. So networking is huge. So that means every single career fair I've gone to, I've gotten an email from the people I've talked to. I have a list on my Google Drive where it's every single company with an email. I've listed it out. So in the future, if I need to reach out to someone and ask, try to connect and get a internship or something, or I guess at a job at this point, I can be hey, I don't know if you remember, I met you 3 years ago at the RPI career fair. So things like that means a lot too, because that having those connections is maybe all you need to get an in into a company, to get a reference for a company. So that's really big too. Finally, I would say, so I know a lot of you may not have interned anywhere yet, and you may not even know what kind of internship you want. Especially when I first, until I was a junior, I didn't even know if I wanted to be a chemical engineer. Yeah, I knew I was going to finish my degree because I was more than halfway through it, but I was kind of I hate this, I hate my classes, everything sucks, class is so hard, why am I at RPI? I was definitely having that train of thought for a while, because it's hard and I didn't think I'd like it. And so I kind of challenged myself where I was you know what, I'm going to do an internship that is heavy chemical engineering, which is working at a chemical plant, and I'm going to explain why I want, really why I want it. And so that's what I did during my, when I first met with a recruiter, and then afterwards in my interviews, I was just very genuine with them to help them understand that I truly wanted, why I really wanted the experience. It's not just to get an experience, it was more than that. And I think that really resonated with them. Finally, I would say I know that there's not a lot of recruiting events happening. There's definitely some here and there. I know SASE had SASE Nationals. There's definitely some things. But another thing to do is just cold call, email people, message people on LinkedIn. And then if you can't find things on Glassdoor and Indeed and those kind of job searching companies, you can also, or those type of job searching applications, if you just look up top companies in your field, you can, if you go to their websites and their career page, you can look through their actual careers page and parse through them yourself. And that way you may find jobs and internships that are not in the traditional kind of in Google, Indeed, LinkedIn, those kind of websites. So you might find something that you didn't even think you expected to find. And I would leave it with, don't stop trying. My sophomore year, I applied to 180 something different internships during winter break because I hadn't gotten one. My parents were, killing me about it, and I was trying to figure it out. So just don't stop trying, and eventually you'll get something. So that's my advice.
Yeah, that's really great to hear about all that advice. It's definitely, you made a really good point that both researching the company, companies and field you're interested in, and also networking is really essential for getting those opportunities that you want. So Summit, did you want to answer the question?
I mean, I'm pretty sure Manisha hit pretty much all the main points, though really good articulate answer there. one thing that I do, I guess I can go a little bit more into specifically, software engineering or cybersecurity type industry roles. So when it comes to that, you're most often going to be hit with two types of interviews, being the behavioral and the technical interview. So with your behavioral interview, as Manisha said, make sure you practice. If you just Google top 30 behavioral interview questions, you're going to find a good list that you can go through. I know back in the olden days when we actually used to go to campus, the CCPD, like you could walk up there and be like, hey, give me a list of your top like X interview questions. And they'll be like, here you go. And then just sit through those one day just with like a pen and paper and just write down the answers that you have to those questions and then just practice saying them with a friend, as Manisha talked about, because that practice that you get just speaking to those questions and answering them, especially within time as well, time yourself answering the questions. That way you're not just telling a super long story and just dragging the interview on without your interviewer like kind of getting like, what's the point of this? That's a really big part of it as well. Just making sure that you are articulate in your answers and ensuring that you are practicing them as well. So that's for your behavioral interviews. Then specifically in the, at least if you're trying to gun for a software engineering or like a cybersecurity role, then you're going to get asked technical questions as well. There's a really good book called Cracking the Coding Interview, which if you're in the CS field, I recommend you get it or at least read some of the chapters from it if you can get your hands on it somehow. It introduces you to what technical interviews look like, at least when trying to get a software engineering job or role. And you're going to need your hard skills, so your data structures, your algorithms, all that material. But then just remember that when you're also interviewing for at least like a technical role, it'll look really good if you can answer the question and answer it correctly. But if you don't, that's not the end of the world. All right? Because when you are interviewing, you want to make sure that your thought process, that's the thing that they're looking for. They're looking to see how you tackle a problem, if you can communicate your problem well, and where essentially your head is going, right? That's the important thing. That's what the interviewers want to see. And at the end of the day, they just want to have a really nice conversation with you. If they can have a really good conversation with you in order to, that A, displays your skills, and B, shows that you're actually interested in working at that company, then I don't think you can go wrong with that. Similar to Manisha, I also worked at a consulting firm because I wanted to get that kind of IT side of my degree, see what that's like, and then I worked at a software engineering in a software engineering position just to see which one I liked more, right? And then remember that even like if you're in an internship, right, or even if you think, oh man, I don't know if I want to do that, just apply anyway, because I think a huge part of internships as well is figuring out what you don't want to do in the industry. So, for example, for my software engineering role, I got to work with really cool technology. I was working on natural language processing stuff, but I was in the healthcare field. And after working there, I realized, wow, I do not want to deal with healthcare at all. It's not for me. So even if you get an internship where you're not really liking the work, it's still a good experience, and it allows you to practice your other soft skills as well. So just speaking with your coworkers, learning how relationships essentially get built, those are important skills that you're going to need. And in order to actually get your foot in the door, make sure you're practicing your interviewing soft skills just as much as your hard skills as well.
Yeah, that's really great to hear. Thanks. I mean, like, yeah, for a lot of people, like interviews are definitely like hard to master and do well in, but they are really essential for actually being able to like secure a position that you're interested in. Terry?
I would like to say that I had an opposite experience to someone because while he disliked healthcare, after my experience with biomedical engineering, I found myself completely attracted to medicine. And so again, just to emphasize one of his points is you really want to have a wide breadth of experience in the industry, whether that's research or an internship, because it will really give you a gauge on what part of what field do you like. You know, it's not good enough to say you're a major and you like every single aspect of that major, because that's not true. And some of you may already realize that. Um, I can only speak on behalf of biomedical engineering, but even within the major, there was the concentrations of biomaterials, biomechanics, and bioimaging. And all three were completely distinct, and the types of workplaces and experiences that related to those fields depended on honestly where you were looking, like geographically. You know, what places would allow for biomechanics? You'd probably be looking at prosthetics, right? That wouldn't necessarily translate to something like pharmaceuticals, something more clinically based. And so it took a lot of time for me to actually parse out what I really wanted. It took all 4 years plus 2 years in a master's degree to actually figure out um, what I want. So honestly, take your time and explore. And the other thing is, if you know you don't like something, get out as soon as possible, because you will only have yourself to blame if you stay in something that you don't enjoy. Um, and there are many reasons you might stay in something that doesn't necessarily appeal to you at first, right? It might be some type of pressure from the outside. It might be classmates. It might be your parents. It might be just how much time you've already sunk into it. But college is really a time for exploration, and I cannot emphasize enough that you should use every second to figure out what you really want to do for the next 40 years of your life. Yeah.
So intense, Terry. The next 40 years of your life.
It is a very long-term commitment. The commitment.
Okay, you can switch industries later if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's not always easy, and for a lot of people, it takes like a really, really long time to actually figure out like what specific field or area they like want to advance their career in. So yeah, that's great to hear that advice. Hanchuan?
Terry mentioned that it is very important to have a very wide range of experience, and I fully agree on what he said. But I want to talk more about the other side of the full wide range of experience, is that sometimes you have to develop skills outside of your scope. Like for me, I was a materials and economics major when I was in RPI, but sometimes the job that most interests you may include that is a materials engineer's job that may include that you have other skills outside of what you learn from school. For example, I am currently I'm doing this chip design or logic architecture project that it requires you to build this logic circuit using C++. And C++ is not something that a materials engineer usually learn during school, nor an economist usually learn when you're in school. But this job is it is called the chip design engineer, and it needs material science people. You just have to develop a different skill set from what normally people think of materials engineers have. And I think this not only applies to the field of materials engineering, this also applies to other fields like architecture. You have to learn how to build structures and by designing it and how the force distribute. But I am not an architect. I cannot speak very professionally or technically about going to the field. This is only an example, but trying to learn different things outside of what you are doing definitely helps with getting interesting jobs and jobs you really want to do after you graduate.
Actually, just to add to that, so what Hanchuan said, I completely agree, because I think that when you're looking, companies are looking for people who know how to learn. Like your degree, half the time is just proving that you know how to learn things. So if you are like, I only know how to do X, like I only know organic chemistry. I want to be a chemist. I only want to work in a lab doing organic chemistry. I mean, maybe you'll find a lab that only does organic chemistry, but companies might look at you and be like, oh, well, you really only want to work in a very specific field doing a very specific thing. So it sounds like you're not going to want to do any other work in other fields that we may have. So they may just write you off. So you want to make sure that in addition to trying things, that you definitely gain new skills and learn how to do new things, because work is always learning. Like you never stop. You're always doing something at work, and like no matter what, like their companies are really looking to make sure that that you have the strength to continue learning and understand their own systems and what they need you to learn. So definitely trying to show recruiters and other people that you are versatile and you have a variety of experiences and skills outside of your field is a way to attract people in your field, companies in your field, because they like to find people who know things outside their traditional like course of study. So I would definitely say that that's a huge advantage.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thanks to everyone for all the like advice and insight on this question. So we're gonna move to the next question. Whoops. Yeah. So the next question is, what are some opportunities at RPI that you think are essential for current students to take advantage of? And by opportunities, I kind of mean like, I'm kind of speaking generally, like in terms of clubs or organizations to be involved in, or undergraduate research, or really anything that can be done at RPI. Which of those or which opportunities do you think are essential for current students to take advantage of in order to make the best of their time at RPI? So this time we can go backwards. So, Anchuan, do you want to start us off?
Okay. So like you mentioned that are a lot of opportunities on our campus, and I want to speak for two of them mostly. One is the networking opportunity in RPI. While I was in RPI, there is this organization called Rensselaer Alumni Association, and it holds a lot of activities where they connect you with RPI alumni. And there are a lot of RPI alumni in the region, so they will usually get a lot of a crowd of alumni who show up in the event. And once I was connected with this a person who was working from IBM, and he gave me a lot of very precious advice. He was a RPI PhD graduate in 2016, and he was an electrical engineer, and he was basically in the same field as me. And he was in this internship opportunity while he was in grad school, and it was in Zurich. And I wanted this opportunity too. That's why I took the initiative of. That's one of the reasons that I took the initiative of going to grad school, because I want to be like him. The other opportunity is I want to speak about. Of course, there are many, but the professors. Many professors in RPI has great industry connections, and if you work for them as an undergraduate research associate, and sometimes they will connect you with those industry connections he or she has. And one of the example is the lab I was working in when I was an undergrad researcher in my group, and my professor was the advisor of a student who founded the company Micron. In case you don't know, Micron is one of the companies that has the leading technology in semiconductor manufacturing technologies, and he also gave me a lot of advice on how to take a career on this field. So I think definitely take advantage of whoever you feel like your research interest is aligned to, and go to the professor and talk to them. If you are not going to work for them, at least talk to them, and you'll have some benefit too.
Yeah, that's really great to hear. Terry?
Just to expand briefly on that research point, I remember my first experience actually trying to network at RKL's freshman year with a professor that during first semester basically told me to come back in a year or two. And so actually that kind of deterred me at first. I think rejection is something that you just have to get used to sometimes. But yeah, I did actually reach out to that professor in another year or two, and that became one of my first research opportunities. And so honestly, right, these are faculty that are honestly pretty impactful in their field, I would imagine, just like Han Chuan gave us an example. And I've worked under some brilliant people, like Ji Wang from the biomedical engineering department.
Terry, it looks like you're cutting off, I think. We can't hear you actually. But...
opportunity to learn from people who've already gone through this, and also just gain exposure to different types of networking opportunities that the organization has already set up, right? With a mentorship program, with these things that are these local, regional, and national conferences. And that's not just for us, right? That's for like SWE and other types of professional organizations that are present across campus. And so you don't have to stop at just SASE, but look at the other opportunities presented in other organizations that we actually collaborate with.
Okay, Summit.
Sure. So definitely do what Terry and Hanchuan were talking about. Networking is one of the things you're going to need to do in order to, it'll help you get jobs and help you advance in your field. But while I was at RPI, I was that kind of guy that just tried to join as many clubs as possible and then just get all those experiences that I could. And while I don't necessarily recommend that, because it can definitely lead to just you being out all day and then coming back at like 10 p.m. and you're like, time to start my homework. That did happen a good bit. But one of the things that I ended up doing was also just becoming involved with Res Life. I know I'm not sure what that scene is kind of looking like right now, especially with COVID and everything of the sort. But something I always told my freshmen was, and really anybody who was entering college, was there were 3 types of clubs that I think you should join at RPI. The first is something that's going to help you make money. So this is something that is a networking organization like SASE, right? This is something that helps you grow your hard skills or expands and diversifies upon your skills. So if you're an engineer, right? I think there's a group called like the R Pirates or something like that, where they focus on the language. There's a computing language called R, which is meant for a lot of data statistics, and just taking a look at those and being able to come up with nice graphs. So having those skills as an engineer and being able to communicate the work that you would be showing off in a meeting, let's say, being able to go to an interviewer and say, I know how to do this, helps, with the other points that were brought up earlier in terms of diversifying your skill set. And you have opportunities at RPI to do that. The second is something that helps keep you physically fit. So again, difficult thanks to COVID-19 and everything that's going on. I don't know what that landscape looks like at RPI right now, but if there are groups that encourage that kind of activity, I would say 100% go for it. You're going to be in your classes. You're going to be, at your dining halls, freshman 15, all that fun jazz. Or even if you're not, right? Even if you're just at home and you have to build into your schedule some time that helps keep you fit. So as long as you are with a supportive group of people through a club or something of the sort, or just even just like a group of friends, right? Which again, COVID situation, not sure how it's looking, but having some time to yourself to work on your body and just to help keep you fit is also going to help you with your classes as well. I believe it's like if you do exercise, a little bit of time before sitting down to do some work, it'll help you absorb the knowledge better. So just doing something and it's also fun, right? Pick something that you have fun with. And the third type of club that I always recommended, every incoming freshman or, really anybody to join is something that you would never ever would see yourself doing. So when you're in college, this is the time for you to explore, right? I think as Terry mentioned before, this is the time for you to basically figure out what you enjoy doing. And you might be looking at something, you're looking through the club list or whatever, and you're like, man, that sounds kind of lame. Try it, honestly, because you never know what you're actually going to enjoy doing until you actually do it. Just a little anecdote for me. For me, this was boxing. So while I was at RPI, I never really did like any sports in high school. I was a lot chubbier than I am now. And a friend of mine, I highly attributed this to a friend of mine just kind of walking into our dorm room one day when me and like 3 other friends were hanging out, and he just said, "Hey, who wants to go to this RPI boxing club with me? This meeting that's happening on Saturday." And everybody was silent, and I just said, "You know what? Whatever, I'll do it. Right? What's the worst that could happen? Right? I'll just get sweaty for a little bit." And I think that is one of the best decisions I ever made, because boxing is still something that I keep up with, and it's still something I do. I'm not very good at it, but it's something that helps me stay fit. And I never, ever, ever would have imagined that I enjoyed, getting punched in the face on Sundays. But it's something that ended up happening, and it's so much fun, right? So I know that during the activities fair, you pack lights in order to get people to go to them. They would make grilled cheese on top of like their stage lights that they had, and that's if even if like it's just little things like that made you interested in being like, what are these guys about? Learn how to put on a light show or something, right? So joining these kind of opportunities, as well as all the networking stuff that has been talked about before, but then just working on at least these kind of things. I see Eric has the Rensselaer boxing hoodie. I love it. Just working on these kind of things is, and just helping, it helps you grow as an individual, and it helps expand your worldview. And you might think, okay, is that really going to help me get a job? It is, because say you're just like in an interview and you start mentioning something that that interests you at RPI. If your interviewer is also enjoying that activity, it might be like, oh man, let's talk about that for a while, right? And that just helps you make that connection. So yes, do all the networking stuff, but also make time to explore the opportunities that RPI has. I think RPI has that community and that environment where there are clubs that you can join, and it's relatively easy to join one. I really hope that you guys can go, after this COVID thing's over, wear your masks, stay inside. I hope that you all can get that same experience.
Yeah, that's really great to hear. Definitely like the 3 different types of clubs that you mentioned are really like good to be involved in, and also you made a really good point that like doing something, like trying something that you could never see yourself doing, or just like stepping outside your comfort zone in general is like, it's not always easy, but it definitely is really important, because like that really is where you're gonna learn the most and experience the most.
100%. And like, what's the next chance that you're going to be able to learn like judo, right? Like just randomly just walk into somewhere and you're like, all right, I'm going to be able to throw people around for like an hour, right? Like, you're not going to have many of those opportunities after college. So at least for free.
Yeah, that's true. Monisha?
Yeah, so just adding on to what someone said about like how college is a time of exploring, like I completely agree. Like I think I think I didn't join any clubs my freshman year. And then sophomore year I joined like 10 at once. That was a bad idea, but I did all kinds of things. Like I sold concessions for UPAC Cinema at like 12 a.m. on like Friday nights, when they used to host those movies. I was in the back selling concessions, and then like I don't know, like I did all kinds of random things. Like I joined the Interplanetary Society. We did like for like a competition that had to do with like rovers and stuff. And then I joined the AIA Design Build Fly Club, even though I'm not an aero. I don't know anything about it, but I like I joined a bunch of different places, and like I landed somewhere. Like SASE was part of where I landed. But but my point is like you're never gonna have a chance again to like meet people from such a diverse area. And so it's definitely one thing that I really think that like you should take advantage of, students should take advantage of, is like the variety of opportunities and clubs to join. So for example, when I talk about Design Build Fly, like for those of you that don't know, they like do a competition where they like build like a little kind of like plane of some sort and fly it around for the competition, and it's like pretty intense. But I soon realized I didn't have the skills or the interest in doing the building, but I wrote their technical report for them. It was like 50 pages long, but I learned a lot, and I also like they gained a lot from me too, and it's something I still have on my resume, and it's something totally different from anything chemical engineering related. Similarly, I did research in cognitive science, also very different. So like there's definitely some things that like I could say, like looking back, like I'm so glad that I like joined such a diverse group of like diverse clubs, and I did like interesting research in a different field. But one thing nobody has talked about yet is Greek life. So I know Terry's in Greek life, and so am I. And it's not something for everybody, but I do think that if you're looking for a community and you're not able to find one, Greek life is definitely an option where people will take care of you and welcome you, at least for, I can't really speak for fraternities, but I can speak for sororities. And so like that is something that I found was a good place for me. But I think, again, like it really depends on who you are and what you're looking for. So also if anybody wants to ask me about it, I can give an honest answer. In person, or like if you like IM me or something. But I think that that's definitely not something essential. I just think it's essential to try to find a community, and whether that is at SASE or through Greek life or through the Interplanetary Society, whatever it is, that's something that you can. That's something that you'll need, especially moving forward as things get more difficult as they have now with COVID. But just another thing that I was thinking about. I really think it's important to take advantage of the Career Center at RPI. It is really, really good. The Career Center has so many resources, and many people I know never use them. And I became really good career-wise because because of the Career Center, where like they do interview prep. They have a ton of resources on their websites on how to reach out to people. They will help you with literally anything if you ask them. Some of them are really nice people. So I really think that a lot of students just like have lost their way and trying to figure out what they want to do with their career. Like, and I'm not just talking about finding internships. It's like, let's just say you're lost and your advisors aren't able to help you for some reason. Someone at the Career Center can. So like, that's definitely something I think you should take advantage of. Because it's a whole resource just waiting for your help. Another thing, or waiting for you to use. Another thing that I think is really helpful is where ALAC is in the library, there's also an area where you can have people look over your technical writing. So like people will review your technical reports. And I remember, so chemical engineers don't take IED. We take this other class called Triple E. It's Energy, Entropy, and Equilibrium. But it's very similar. We have a project, we have to write a report for it. And the report's crazy. And my group, we did really well in the report as opposed to everyone else, just because we got our report reviewed by this technical writer that like looked it over for free because RPI pays her for it. So like, you know, RPI has a lot of random resources for you. They have a lawyer. So like every time I got a speeding ticket, I like just, you know, emailed Scott Morley, the RPI lawyer, and I was like, hey, can you help me out here? And he's like, sure, like just send me your like driving history and I'll get it off your record. Like I'll turn it into a parking ticket. Like, so you'd be surprised at the things RPI has for you. Another thing that I would say is eShip. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that. It's the entrepreneurial like competitions that like where if you're really looking to like do something interesting, like I definitely think that eShip is something you should look into. It's something I regret not joining, where they really like they like take you to conferences for free to like look at different things and come up with like ideas for like projects and like different kinds of inventions you want to make. And so I really wish I had done that. I didn't, but it's something I know people who have done who really I'm sorry, I'm looking at Eric's messages. But
Oh, there's
There's slander against my name. I'm just saying.
I can speak fairly that their driving is pretty much the same.
wait,
Because I have been to both of their cars.
wait,
Wait,
someone
No.
got into accidents. I'm not that bad at
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like the proper
This is a
skill.
topic that's going to
Shit.
just quickly devolve into a bunch of hearsay and slander. So I suggest we move on. Just saying. I'm a changed man.
Yeah, also I feel like the proper scale is from Wesley to Monisha, but just saying. So yeah, we're gonna move on to the next question then. So is there anything, I know you guys have talked about some things that you regret doing in your like previous answers, but just to give you a chance to like say it again, is there anything that you regret not doing in your undergraduate college career? And that could be either academically, socially, professionally, or anything else.
I will speak first because Manisha has to get her jacket because it is getting a little cold. So the the most regretful thing that I have not done in RPI was I should have made connections while I was earlier than what I was making the connection. So I started to socialize with people really starting in junior year. What I should have done is start in freshman year. That make me have 2 more years of socializing and trying to know more people. Because I realized I did make a lot of great friends and great mentors while I started to socialize with more people. If I could have started in my freshman year, I would have a bigger community around me than starting in junior year. I started a little bit late, which I regret until today.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Monisha, did you want to answer the question?
Yeah, so I did speak about how eShip was something that I wish I had done because it's such a great opportunity, especially if you have like an idea that you're like, you want to, if you're the kind of person who wants to like create something and they'll even give funding for it. Like I know somebody who won, I think he got like 2K or something from winning the competition. Like it's like pretty great. Though I'm not as familiar with this since I didn't do it. But another thing I regret is with my research. So I know I had mentioned I did cognitive science research, and I stuck around with it for 2 years because the work I was doing was helpful to them. But I realized although I like learned a lot, it wasn't really what I wanted to do, and I felt obligated to continue doing it because they didn't have that many, because I became an experienced researcher and they were relying on me a lot. And I wish I had left sooner and joined a different research group that had more interesting things that were interesting to me, especially because I know people who've done like very interesting research where they even get published and they do a lot of their own work. It's not just like it's more like mentally challenging than maybe the kind of research I did. So that's definitely something where I felt like I stuck around too long, and I would really recommend that, if you're doing something and you're not happy about it, you don't owe anyone anything in college. You're already paying so much money to go to college. So do what you want to do and make sure that you speak up for yourself, because I didn't, and I felt like I lost a year of research that I could have done. So like that's definitely another thing that I think I regret not doing. And I know I briefly heard Hantron mention socializing, and I think I was pretty social my freshman year, but I think that I could have, made more connections with people, especially older people. Like, so when I was a freshman, like upperclassmen, like those are the kind of people who like offer a lot of advice. And I think that I should have worked a little harder to make more relationships with them, because those kind of relationships can really help you when you're struggling through something. So that's another thing that I wish I had done more of.
Yeah, that's a good point. I definitely think that like for a lot of people in freshman year, it's kind of easy to like overlook how important networking is and like just getting to know other people, because that definitely is something that I overlooked also, but it definitely is something that's really important to do. Summit?
Sure. Personally, I like to just think that, whenever I do something, I try not to regret it in the end. But if there's one thing for sure that I cannot stress enough, that I still also am working on, start your homework on time. And I'm not saying, and on time does not mean like 2 days before. On time means read your homework as soon as you get it. All right? 100%. Because you are oftentimes, even when you think you're going to have time, things come up, right? And then lo and behold, you're going to be up all night, just working on some assignment, okay? So definitely, at least speaking from a computer science perspective, your data structures homework is going to come out, right? Or whatever it is, your assignment for Foundations of Computer Science. Just open up the PDF and just read it. At least start to read it, and then make a plan for how you're going to tackle it. Because your time management is something that is going to happen just as a natural result of being at RPI. Because if you can't manage your time, you're not going to do well. Just that's it. That's like, you'll be able to skim by, right? But you won't be living up to your potential. And again, as I mentioned before, this is something that I also still struggle with, because there's work, everything after that. Something I forgot to mention is that I actually started graduate school as well, doing computer science at Johns Hopkins. So just having those skills in order to help manage your time, and those time management skills that you learn at RPI help you manage everything that's happening. So 100% read your homework, all right? And then the second thing would probably be, yeah, I'll be honest, as I mentioned before, I tend to just, like, in my opinion, you shouldn't dwell on things for too long. You should take the good from what you did, right? Reflect on the things that you messed up in, because you're going to mess up 100%. During RPI and other times as well, you're going to mess up. Just look at them. Don't get too caught up when you mess up, though, right? Realize that you mess up. Take ownership that you messed up. Do what you can to try and make it right. And then take the good from it and then move forward, because you're going to mess up 100%. And don't let that stop you, because as long as you set your mind to something, you're going to succeed at it. At least that's how I feel. And even if you don't, you're going to learn from it. So yeah, start your homework on time.
Yeah, those are some really good points, and I can definitely like relate to procrastinating and like staying up until 3 a.m. finishing a homework assignment that I should have started earlier. So yeah, that's a really good point that you made. Who's Terry?
I really like someone's point on trying to embrace the fact that you can fail and the fact that you will. I think the idea of vulnerability is something that's not really stressed as you're going through these classes, and you're just trying to, go through school in general. And I realized that as I was struggling to just even, present for capstone or IED, or literally make a little cannon in CAD, all these things that I thought I was tolerating, no, I was building skills that led me be more confident in future classes. And honestly, I wish I took more opportunities to present at things like this during my undergraduate career, because I realized that even now in graduate school, I should be more confident in what I'm saying. I should be okay with saying I don't know, because I'm learning while I'm working, and I like it a lot. And it's being able to fill in those gaps and being eager, waking up every day and about what I'm learning, that's really helping me thrive. But I'm still having an issue with presenting to people that should be like my friends, my peers. So I would take every opportunity you have to get exposure in public speaking specifically too, whether that be academic or just professional. Also, that's just a good way to network. Again, either you're exposing yourself to people who are speakers, or you are learning about weaknesses that you have. But other than that, just have more fun in college, really.
Can I just say something real quick on Terry's note about public speaking? Please note that definitely do that. You're going to need to be able to articulate yourself in every situation you're in, whether it be an interview or a panel like this or anything else. I mean, even just when you're communicating with your parents or your friends. I know RPI has a really good speech communication course that I took as part of my last semester with Professor Merrill Whitburn. He might have retired, but if you can take some kind of speech communication class, highly recommend it. One of the easily top 3 class I took at RPI. He's still there. I see him in the chat. Perfect. If you have the opportunity to take a class with him, and even if you don't, right, just reach out to him and be like, what are the like biggest tips that you can just give to somebody, right, who's trying to learn how to speech or learn how to speech. It looks like I need to brush up. Learn how to speak well. Then definitely do that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think public speaking for a lot of people is like one of the most difficult skills to actually master. But it is like really just one of the most important skills in life for like getting anywhere you want to go. So thanks to everyone for answering this question. So Now we're going to be opening it up to the audience to ask any questions that they have, either for specific alumni or just in general. So if you have any questions, then please leave them in the chat. And yeah.
If there are no questions in like the next minute, we have backup questions that we can ask also.
So Kevin had a question. So what methods do you employ for self-accountability? And if any of you want to start to answer that question, then you can go ahead.
Yeah, I think I have something I can say for that. So self-accountability is important, but it's definitely hard because you just put everything in your head and you think you'll remember it all, and then you don't. One thing I do is before my meetings at work, what I'll do is I will create an agenda, and at the end of the meeting, I'll create a list of action items. And they have little check boxes, and I like checking the boxes off. But like the other thing is, then I can look back at my meetings and be like, oh, like I forgot to do this thing. Let me do it. And I know I'm talking about in the workplace, but I also did this for my capstone and other group projects, especially when it wasn't just myself I had to be accountable for, but other people as well. Where, like, whenever you're doing something, like, set a time and make a list of things that you need to do. And you like remember, like, don't overwhelm yourself. Like, don't say I'm going to do these 10 things in the next 2 hours, but definitely like kind of setting a time for a task and then coming up with a list of things you have to do maybe based off that task and then checking them off. That has always helped me. And another thing is sometimes, like, I study with friends and stuff. So I'll say, like, let's do this part together and try to like finish these homework questions by the end of the day. So that way, like, we're kind of like working together. And what's keeping me accountable is the fact that there's somebody else who's also doing it with me and has the same expectations from me. So that's another thing that I would say has kept me really accountable with my work.
Can I just also add on to that? So definitely echoing what Manish said about writing things down. Every single day, I write down what I'm doing for that day, and then always look back on it at the end and just say, all right, this is what I haven't gotten done yet. This is what I need to get done. I'm going to talk about two specific things that have helped me in the past. Something that I learned at my first internship. Take a sheet of paper, split it up into 4 quadrants. In the top left, put the things that you need to get done long term, right? In the top right, put the things that you need to get done in about like a month or so, something that you want to get done. In the bottom right, put down the things that you're going to get accomplished like in the next like a week or the next few days. And in the bottom left, put the things that you need to get done like today. That's what you have to get done. And that way you'll have like an ever rotating quadrants that you can use in order to just track your work. And the second thing is, with your goal setting, if you're familiar with the SMART acronym for making goals, it's a pretty good one in my opinion. Go ahead and Google it, SMART goals. But it stands for S is specific. So make sure that the goals that you're making for yourself are things that you can get done, or rather that you know exactly what you have to do in order to finish them. Second is measurable. So ensure that they're things that you can actually view how well did I actually get this done, and if not, make a scale for it. Third is achievable. So it's not as if, I'm going to do 100 push-ups today, even though I've never done a push-up in my life. No, that's not achievable, right? You need to do something that you're going to slowly work towards and slowly build up, right? So ensure that your goal is something that you'll be able to do, or you can push yourself to try and do that. Fourth is relevant. So ensure that it's something that is important to you and is important to whatever the task is that you're trying to help get done with. And finally, it's time bound, right? So make it time sensitive for yourself. And with that accountability, you have to make sure that you're writing it down. That's where I think that quadrants can also help you, and writing things down can help you get that established. So, advice for that.
So I have a question for you guys. First I want to thank you guys. You guys are a real inspiration to people like me. You guys, are very inspirational. You're very successful people, right? But in your time, as in all of you are from different industries. Some of you have progressed into higher education. Some of you have progressed into the workforce. And obviously, you would encounter a lot of different types of people. Whether you are the new kid on the job, at the lowest rank, entry level, whether you are the new student, you don't really know what's going on, you don't really know what's happening. So I want to ask you guys, how do you guys deal with when people treat you like the new kid? So one could call it, a toxic environment, right? Whether people are making fun of you for not knowing what's really going on in the job, or you're going on a fishing competition and your friend makes fun of you for not being able to catch a fish, right? How would you guys respond to a toxic environment?
So I'm just gonna start off with thank you for answering, or thank you for asking that question, Wesley. For those of you who don't know, Wesley likes to ask and incorporate the words toxic environment in every single question he likes to ask, despite being in the least toxic environment imaginable that he surrounded himself in. But getting back to his point and actually kind of being serious about it, if you are in an environment where somebody is bashing on you for not knowing something, which may happen, right? Especially, in the workforce or whatever. First of all, don't let it get to you. Second of all, you are there to learn in the first place, especially if you are the new kid on the block. You're the engineer who is just starting at the company. People are going to know that you don't know, you really don't know anything, right? When it comes to just working where you are. So make sure that you're taking all the information that you can get, right? If somebody mentions something that you're unaware of, don't be afraid to just reach out to a senior engineer and be like, hey, I don't get this. Can you please just explain this topic to me? Something that I do personally at work, at Boeing, we use so many acronyms, right? As pretty much everywhere you're going to work is going to use a ton of acronyms, so just embrace that first of all. I'm sure Monisha knows what I'm talking about. And then so somebody will be like, oh, we need to do the SDD for the FAA, and I'm like, what the heck is an SDD? Just don't be afraid to just be like, hey, if you can't interrupt them, right? Because gotta watch who you're speaking to. Write down what you don't know, and then just go to them later and be like, hey, what did you mean by this? What did you mean by this? What did you mean by this? Right? Do not be afraid to do that. Everybody at my work knows if I don't know something, I'm going to ask, and that's usually cited as one of the qualities that people like about me. The fact that I'm actually doing that, and I'm not afraid, right, to say, yo, I don't know what that means. Can you just go into this? And you'll be surprised when you say you don't know something, and this goes for class as well. If you say you don't know something, raise your hand, you're like, professor, what does this mean? Chances are you just ask that question on behalf of at least 30% of your class, because people don't know, they're not paying attention for whatever reason, but they could just be following along and they're like, I have no idea what's going on right now. So that's the biggest thing. Don't be afraid to ask. And if somebody's being toxic to you because you asked a question, that person, first of all, should just know their place and sit down. But the other thing is that don't let it get to you.
Yeah, I would definitely add to that on in the workplace. Okay, I totally understand what you mean. Some of the acronyms. Oh my God, there's so many. But in terms of feeling like the new kid, I just onboarded virtually a month and a half ago, and so I've only been working for 6 weeks at this new company. I go in maybe 2-3 times a week out to work, so I'm still the new kid on the block, and it's definitely very interesting, the interactions I have with people. Mostly people are very welcoming and nice, but one thing that I have noticed is sometimes it's hard to ask a lot of questions to the same person, because you feel stupid doing it. You don't want them to think you're stupid, right? Like you're like, oh, like I should know this. I've been hired. Like, why am I asking all these stupid questions? But like someone said, a lot of people expect you not to know anything. But at the same time, some people are very busy. And when they're really busy, they don't have time for your questions. And so what I found was a really good way to kind of acclimate was I make sure that I do all my research first into something before asking a question. So, for example, my company has something where you have to write a process concept or project concept statement, and it's like a 2-page document where you talk about the project and its purposes and its who's involved, like what the success is, what failure is, like what the monetary benefit is, all kinds of stuff. And I was making one like my second week, and I was like, I don't even know anything about this company. Here I am writing this thing for a capital project. I don't know what's going on. So instead of just asking someone for help, I first made an attempt and tried to figure it out and write my best to my ability. And then when I asked questions, someone was like, oh, well, have you done XYZ? And I was like, oh, well, here, let me show you what I have done. What do you think I can do to improve? Like, can you give me any feedback? And that way it was like a much more productive conversation. And I also showed that I'm still taking initiative, even though I don't know what's going on. So instead of just asking a lot of questions when I'm confused, I'm making sure I'm asking like educated questions. And I think that definitely helps in making me feel like a more, like someone who actually graduated college. Like I'm not just like useless, like I'm learning, like I have something to my name too. And that's important, like to make sure you don't feel like, you don't get that imposter syndrome at work or wherever you may be. Like if you're in somewhere new, like it's all right to ask questions, but also like if you're still uncomfortable about it, just make sure your question is educated, and that'll definitely help you become more acclimated. And the other thing I have to say is making personal connections really helps. So that means don't just ask people about whatever topic it is that you're there. So like, I don't know if it's a club, I'm trying to think of an example. Like if you join like the boxing club, someone was talking about, don't just talk about boxing. Ask them how their weekend was. Like ask them, like, oh, like how was your week? Like any difficulties? Like, I don't know, how's your mom doing? I mean, only if you know their mom, don't just ask that randomly. But like, I'm just trying to convince, like, or if you know that they like something, be like, oh, like, that the past weekend they went somewhere, be like, oh, how was your trip? Like, try to create like a genuine personal connection with people, and then you'll feel less new because you know more about someone's personal life. So I really think that's also very important, like making those connections. It's more than just networking. It's also like having friends at work or at whatever club or whatever thing you're joining. And just one more thing, Wesley mentioned like you meet all kinds of people, and I will have to say, like, to all like the women who are listening to this, like one thing I can say for sure is like when you're working in manufacturing, you'll experience some kind of microaggression at some point. You'll experience someone telling you something you're uncomfortable with. I mean, this week there was an operator who asked me what the name was and then commented on my experience like 3 times, and I felt very uncomfortable about it. I think he thought it was a compliment, but I was like, if the only thing you can talk to me, a professional woman, about is my appearance, like I'm uncomfortable, right? Things like that happen, and if it's something that repeatedly happens, you should definitely report it. Don't just swallow it and move on. But at the same time, it's definitely being like a female engineer is definitely has its own trials and tribulations. And when you're new, you don't really know what kind of culture you've joined and the kind of people you've joined. So it's definitely, I would just say like a little bit of advice is don't give too much personal information in the beginning. Just try to feel out the culture and understand the kind of people you're around. And then, share more and make more connections just to protect yourself a little more. So just some advice on that.
I want to add something too. For someone who goes into a field, who just goes into a field not established, there are some benefits to it as well. One is that you have a very open mind because you don't have much influence from the previous influence from this field as other people. And by having this open mind, you can be more curious about every aspect in the same field. And this gives you two advantage. One is you can really learn a lot by having an open mind. The second is when people who are actually established, they look at you and you have a very open mind and you're curious and eager to learn. That makes you a very likable person, and they will give you very valuable advice to how do you become more successful in this field. About other things outside of academics, about things like skill-based, you just have to practice it. Even if you people just came in like before you, they're just more skillful than you. It doesn't matter. Sometimes it's more experience give you more success. You don't have to like push yourself too hard on it, because it is only a matter of time. So don't get too stressful when things don't go the way that you want them to go.
Just something to add to what Hanchuan said too about being eager. So when you're new, people aren't going to listen to you in the beginning, or they might, but they're not going to, like, there's a way something's done, you know, whether it's you join a club, like you don't just join SASE and say, you know what, I think your entire election system should be different. You know, you meet people, understand how it is, and then you provide your input. So like your opinion is always important. Don't forget that. You should be confident in yourself. But also make sure you have to remember that there's other people who've been there for a long time and know how things run, and maybe you need to learn a little bit about the way things are for whether it's a project or a club or at work, and then you can provide your input. So that means showing you're really eager and to like learn and understand from like the perspectives and the work other people do when you're new is very valuable, instead of going in there and saying you know everything, because that kind of confidence is not appreciated in the workplace from someone who's new, since there's so many things that you may not know. So definitely take some time to understand the area and like the culture and the situation before you express things that you think may be I don't know, like things that maybe like cause some conflict or something, or cause maybe something that is different, because sometimes people don't like things that are different. And so like when you like new people always have new perspectives and new ideas, and those are oftentimes the most helpful things, the reason why companies and clubs grow, because of new ideas. But you can't come in with only a bunch of new things. You also have to come in understanding the old things too.
Thank you, guys. Are there any other questions? If not, I have a question of my own. Did you, for everyone of you guys, did you end up where you thought you would be when you were just a freshman? Did you plan to work at your jobs or to go to graduate school? If you didn't end up where you thought you would be, are you happy where you are right now?
I can take that one first. And then you might have seen that I laughed because I've got a funny story about this one. When I was a freshman at the career fair, one of the biggest pieces of advice that I got was, hey, go up to a company that you really don't think you're ever going to be interested in working at, and just talk to them in order to get those career fair jitters out of your system, which is definitely a really good thing to do. It just helps you practice your 60-second sell or whatever you were practicing up to that point in order to do that. So I walked up to Ernst and Young, to their booth, and I was like, okay, this will be my one-off company. They're like a finance company or something. I'm not going to see myself working here. So I talked to the guy, give him my cell, all that jazz, and then afterwards he's like, yeah, just so it'd be good to go to a company that you don't care about first, and then it'd be good to like practice that, get those jitters out of your system. And I was like, okay, I guess this guy thought that I just bombed like that hard. All right, whatever. And I kind of walked away thinking, I'm not going to work for this company ever again. Come sophomore year, sophomore career fair, sophomore fall career fair, they had some free stuff at their table, so I just kind of took some. Then come junior year, I was like, all right, you know what? Like, I'll just go up and talk to him, whatever, right? I'll just go up and talk to the recruiter. And I had a really nice conversation. I had a really nice conversation with the person. I learned that EY doesn't just do finance things. They also do consulting and that sort of thing. And I ended up working there during that summer. And it was actually a really good experience. I actually found that I really do enjoy consulting. So similarly, I never, ever thought that I would be working on airplanes. It's just something that ended up happening. And it's something that I've taken in stride. And I can tell that I'm one of those folks and there are definitely other folks that are like, they're full on like aviation heads, man. They can like tell what a plane looks like. I actually have a coworker. I like to call him my work best friend because we started on the same day, we're on the same team, we're on the same project. He went to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, which is essentially a feeder school, like to go into the aerospace industry. And he would be sometimes monitoring flightradar.com, which is like, you can kind of see what planes are flying overhead. And if there's like a cool one, he would just walk outside and just kind of look at it and then come back inside. So I'm definitely not the same way. So you're going to get a bunch of opportunities that are going to come your way, and you would think to yourself, you're never going to work there. Give it a shot. All right. Because I really do enjoy the people that I work with and some of the work that I've done. And it's definitely a good experience to try as many things as you can. So just go with it just go at it with a good attitude and see what comes of it.
For me, my experience was no. I was not. I was not picturing of where I am when I first came into college. Although my dad used to go to grad school, so does my mom. Actually, my mom is in the same field as me. But I did not picture myself going to grad school when I first came into college, because when I first came into college, I thought, oh, doing grad school, that's more school. I don't really like school. It's so difficult. And then I realized after 3 years of undergrad, I feel like I found myself not learning enough to do the really cool things in the industry. And I want to do cooler things. So I found that going to grad school might be necessary for me to do what I really want to do. So where I am now really starts to be clear to me after 2 years of college.
So for myself, I would say I didn't really know what a chemical engineer actually did in the workplace. So I can't say that I didn't really have any expectations, because I didn't know anything. But I do think that I knew I wanted to work, and I wanted to work in a company that had a lot of opportunities for creativity and a lot of opportunities for movement. And I found both at the company I work at. Most people move around jobs in the company like every 1 to 2 years. So like whether it's doing R&D, new product development, process engineering, sales, customer facing, product specialist, like there's like so many different fields that you can like switch around in. And I'm really happy that I found a company that has that, because I'm still not sure if this is exactly the career I want for the next 40 years of my life, as someone put it earlier. But I do think that I'm in the right place now to really learn and develop my skills, especially my technical skills. For example, just one thing I want to throw out there. So I took IEA freshman year. Right? I'm sure many of you may have had to take that as well. And for chemical engineer, I was like, at the time, I was like, this stuff, I'm never going to use it again. Chemies don't use that. We only work with reactors and like distillation columns. And then in the project I'm working on right now, I'm using like things I used in IEA for that project. So you never know what comes back from your time at school, at work. Things that look familiar to you, it's just really helpful that they just look familiar to you, because by the time when you're actually working, like there's so many things thrown at you at once. So having some theory from college to back it up always helps. But anyway, to answer your question, I'm glad that I landed where I am, and I think it's going to be a really good jumping off point for myself personally and career-wise.
Thank you. So I think we have enough time for at least one more question, but if we don't, we could head to the outro. So does anyone else have any last questions for the alumni?
Hi guys, I have a question. Okay, so my dad tries to prepare me for my interview sometimes, so he like asks me questions during dinner sometimes. So one question that he asks is, what are some weaknesses that you have? And I didn't exactly know how to tackle that question, so I was wondering what you guys would say at an interview for that.
So that's always a really tough question, but I think the way that I usually answer it is I always answer interview questions with experiences. So like, they're more memorable and they offer more insight to the interviewer. And so I usually bring up an experience that shows a weakness and then show how I made sure to correct myself in the future. For example, one thing I sometimes say is, oh, like, at an internship, I was working on a project and I didn't consider, I'm trying to think of an example. Oh, okay. So like I didn't consider all the stakeholders in the project. So one thing that I'll do is sometimes I become like very detailed. So like that's my weakness, and I'm like, really detailed, and like I didn't look at the big picture, and that's something that's very important, obviously, looking at the big picture. So I talk about like a project where I didn't do well because I was like very detailed and looking very narrowly at the I don't know, like what I needed to do and not considering other people who were involved. And then I talk about the fallout. So, like the result was maybe like XYZ, like my result was I accidentally shut like a powder polymer dryer that cost the company a couple thousand. Oops. And then I talk about what I do afterwards to make sure that never happens again. And so I'm like, so in the future, I always make sure to like talk to everybody, find out who all the stakeholders are, and understand the big picture before focusing on before my next project. And then I give an example of that. So like in the next project I did, I made sure I had all my ducks in a row, and I was able to accomplish that. So I would say try to find something that you can show like you learned from. Maybe an example that's more relevant for like you when you're in college could be if you talk about like a group project you worked on, and you could say like, maybe a weakness is staying organized, or a weakness is managing your time. And then you can talk about, oh, well, I learned how to manage my time now, though, because I always make sure to, I make sure that I have a schedule with all the things that I need to do with all the deadlines. So I'm very organized now, and I've always made sure that I'm on track in the future. So those are a couple of ways to talk about your weaknesses and spin them in a positive light, I would say. Oh, and another thing that you can always bring up that I think is good is talking about having confidence, because that's something that all of us struggle with as anyway in the workplace, like as new engineers, having confidence. You can definitely, if you're looking for something that's that you don't have to talk too much about, you could definitely say like, one big weakness I have is speaking up for myself and being confident in what I have to say. It's something I still have to work on, and I'm hoping that through this experience I can gain more confidence in my skills and learn a lot more on how to articulate myself. So that's at least what I would say.
Jumping on, go ahead, Antoine. The floor is yours, my friend.
Thank you, Samad. I want to add on to what Manisha said about confidence. Is that one thing I recently realized is that only people that are confident enough are comfortable enough to talk about their weaknesses. Because if you are not confident enough, every time people bring up your weakness, you're just trying to avoid it. But when you are confident, you just tackle it head on. And when people are asking you what are your weaknesses, it's important to illustrate what is your weakness and how are you working on it to resolve it. That's all I want to say.
I was just going to echo the same stuff. As long as you can portray that that it is something that you are working on, and just give an example of that, then I think the interviewer would be happy to know that. Don't ever, let me just say explicitly, don't ever say you don't have any weaknesses, because the interviewer is going to see right through that. My high school economics teacher said, a good answer to that question is to say that, oh, well, I have some things that I could be working on, but I don't really feel I have any strong weaknesses. I don't think that's good advice, like looking back on it. Everyone has something that they're struggling with, and as Antoine mentioned, the people who are confident are the ones that recognize that, and they're not afraid to admit that, and they're not afraid to admit what they're working on in order to actually fix that.
So thank you guys for coming. Thank you. Big thanks for the alumni for making time to show up and help indulge in our curiosity for the future.
Can I just say one last thing? I'd just like to thank Manisha for bringing up what she said about how women experience a bunch of microaggressions in the workplace. For all the guys that are also in the chat, please do yourself a favor and just look up what women have to go through as well, and think about what you can do to just help make it a more inclusive environment. Just letting you know that it's also your responsibility to make sure you're learning that as well.
Thank you, Simon. That's great to hear you say something like that. I think that if everyone's a little more educated, then that's a lot less likely to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I think
All
we're
right.
gonna head out, but thank you so much,
Yeah.
everyone, for this.
Thank you, Manisha. Thank you, Hantron and Summit, for showing up.
Thank you.
So ends the
Thanks, guys. We
Alumni
miss you.
Experiences
Thank
event.
you for answering my question.